Back in 2001, Jim Gordon and his partners had a vision that this would be the future of clean energy in Massachusetts, a $2.6 billion plan to construct a giant wind farm on the shoals of Nantucket Sound. But 13 years and many lawsuits later, the Cape Wind project has yet to begin. Still, state officials say wind power has a bright future, pointing to an announcement this week that federal authorities will soon open up almost 1,200 square miles of coastal waters for wind energy development. Here to tell us which way the wind is blowing is WGBH News science editor Heather Goldstone. So this snuck up on everybody. How did this come about? The Department of Interior started making all this water land available.
Well, it's actually a process that's been going on for 4 years at this point. Back in 2010, they first designated an area, and for as big as this area that they're putting up for lease now is, the original proposal was twice this size, and I think we have a map of that. You can see the area actually. I was at one public meeting back in 2010, 2011. They were joking it looked like a Scotch Terrier with the tail up in the air, little short legs, the eyebrows, and the little mustache hanging down. That's actually how they would refer to different parts of it. Well, you know, over there by the tail, we actually go fishing, and there's shipping channels that actually go through those back legs over there. And so as a result of some of those comments and concerns about interference with commercial shipping and with commercial fishing, in 2011, they actually scaled that area back, and they've now released, there's a new map, a smaller area that's gone through an initial environmental assessment, and that is the area that they're now almost ready to offer up for lease for wind energy developers.
It says Cape Wind on that. So
yeah, I mean, you can see it's in a very different area. The Cape Wind site.
Would they move the Cape Wind?
No, this is completely separate from Cape Wind. They've had expressions of interest from 10 companies, I believe it is, 11 different possible plans that are interested in leasing this area to develop offshore wind farms, and they'll be going into a competitive bidding process later this year.
Okay, so I saw where some of the opponents of Cape Wind have actually signed on to this. Why couldn't Cape Wind move its turbines?
Cape Wind could potentially, if they wanted to, or could have, if they wanted to, gotten in on this competitive bidding process if they wanted to move. That's a choice that they've made. It's a process that's been completely open. Anybody who wanted to express interest in developing that area, that's been a public process, like I said, for 4 years. And in Rhode Island, there are actually projects that are going forward that at this point are further ahead of Cape Wind, even though they only started 4 or so years ago.
That's what I was going to ask about this. So the permitting process, because of lawsuits and various things for Cape Wind, has been going on for more than 10 years, maybe 15 at this point. So this would be expedited because...
That's the idea behind this process. So there are kind of two driving factors. One is to try to reduce opposition and litigation and the permitting time by making that a very clear process, a process that involves all the stakeholders from the beginning, so fishermen and others can comment on whether or not these are good areas to build wind farms. They do an initial environmental assessment to streamline that whole process. But there are obviously issues that they're not always going to be able to smooth out with this process, and one of them is probably funding.
So wind turbines have been a source of controversy since they were really started. You know, there's health and noise issues, environmental, effects on wildlife and, sea creatures and all that. Is this going to change any of that?
Well, certainly by going further offshore, you get away from some of the concerns about impeded views. This area starts about 12 miles offshore as opposed to the 3 where Cape Wind would have been. I've seen some estimates that on a really clear day, you might be able to see these off on the horizon, but they're 12 miles away. So you're going to, I think, have less of the opposition from land-based groups. The opposition has tended, in the case of the projects going forward in Rhode Island, it's either the commercial fishermen or in some cases actually Native American tribes who have objected because there may be sacred sites and ancient sites there that would be dug up or disturbed by the installations.
So, I mean, everybody argues that the wind farms are really the most clean source of energy that you can produce, although the flip side of that is also can be more expensive. But is this going to be the wave of the future?
It's really hard to know. That's what the Patrick administration was hoping several years back, that wind was really going to be our main source of renewable energy in Massachusetts. The way things have gone the past several years, wind development has almost stagnated, and what we've seen is solar on the rise. So I think it's hard to make a really strong prediction, but certainly the resources there in New England. There's a ton of wind to be exploited if we can figure out how to find the right places.
And of course, now they're talking about ocean current. Forget
Absolutely.
the wind.
Tidal and currents, and the great thing about tides is they're completely predictable, right? You can't predict the wind more than maybe a few hours in advance, but you know when the tides are coming for hundreds of years to come. So that's one that actually the town of Edgartown on Martha's Vineyard is looking into.
Yeah, that one sounds like a good prospect. All right, Heather Goldstone, as always, thank you for coming.